a biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
We're going to be back into the deep end on controversial issues, and there's a number of red flags and questions about freedom and transparency and alignment with global health bodies that we're going to tackle today. You might recall last week the Senate officially passed legislation to establish a permanent Australian Centre for Disease Control. Now, that might have caught your attention. You might be wondering where Christian-aligned advocacy groups might sit there. Well, our special guest coming up 25 minutes from now has expressed fears that a CDC, a Centre for Disease Control, is like a Trojan horse for the World Health Organization, enforcing international health regulations that override Australian sovereignty and personal freedoms. Well, George Christensen says the Australian Centre for Disease Control has nothing to do with controlling disease and everything to do with controlling you. Well, George Christensen will be back with us 25 minutes away. He served 4 terms in the Australian Parliament with the LNP. He's the Australian Campaigns Director for Citizen Go. Now, Citizen Go, Christian-based advocacy organisation, get ready for what you might always appreciate with George Christensen, something a little out on the edge, something very controversial, and, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire, there's always something really powerful that George has to contribute. We're going to open our talkback lines when he joins us. You might have a question, a comment, even a critique. You'll be able to call in on 1800 316 316. You'll be able to text us on 0447 488 316. That conversation 25 minutes from now. Before that, though, previewing some of the issues on the Australian political agenda with the Australian Christian Lobby, and always an amazing pleasure to welcome back to 2020 Michelle Pearse, who is the CEO at the Australian Christian Lobby. Michelle, a special welcome back.
Great to be with you today, Neil.
Hey, Michelle, before we get into the other issues, something pretty significant has happened, and especially for radio listeners, been listening for a long time. The death of John Laws yesterday, 90 years of age, a good innings by any estimate when it comes to years. He was known for his golden microphone and his golden tonsils, career spanning 71 years. Remaining in good health up until just these past few weeks. But I wanted to ask you if you had any perceptions as to whether there was any favourable ways that he ever spoke about ACL. I mean, he was typically a conservative commentator, but as you're reflecting on an incredible career, how do you reflect? Have you got a brief sort of thought here?
Well, he was definitely a respected radio broadcaster and one more on the conservative side. And his voice really helped to shape public debate. I mean, we need radio broadcasters, like you, Neil, who are out there shaping public debate. But we've seen both Albanese and Susan Lee come out and give tribute to him, showing that, he was respected on both sides of politics. But I suppose my mind goes to wondering if the things that he would say now around the issues that we're fighting, around the gender debate, and whether he would still have, approval or a tribute given by the left. But yeah, we need voices like him. And I know his station has continued in his tradition. I'm not aware of the ACL connection, but I certainly know, he was outspoken on the things that we believed in as well.
I tried to do some research. There's very little appears about his religious upbringing. Some biographical sources and interviews suggest that he didn't identify as Catholic and was more aligned with mainstream Protestant or secular views throughout his whole broadcasting career. This idea of secular talkback radio hosts, we can align secularism actually with Christianity. So let's not be too hard, although secular has morphed into something which has become its own ideological position. But if you're reflecting on Talkback radio hosts today, just throwing you in the deep end here, Michelle. There's John Laws, obviously, who's sparked our conversation today, but there's other talkback radio hosts. Are you getting much of a hearing from some of the best-known talkback hosts in the nation? Give us an honest response here. How do they treat ACL? Are they calling you and texting you and saying, hey, Michelle, come and be our guest?
I think the issue is that we need a reassertion of Christian credibility within the nation. I think the institutions need to value the role of Christians and the church. I think through the push of the left, the church has largely been silenced and hasn't been willing to speak out on a lot of these issues for the fear of being called names, and that's not good enough. So ACL sort of at the tip of the iceberg in terms of, we're the ones with that pointy edge into parliaments and into media, but without the groundswell of the church, all speaking as a unified voice, we do find it difficult to get a hearing. I mean, we are in the media every week here and there, and sometimes quoted in left-wing media as well, but it's often not in a favourable way. So we need to see Christian credibility really restored in this nation, and that's one thing we're working hard to do.
And, there'll be some listeners to our conversation today, and they might call in on a talkback program here on 2020, and they might also call on other talkback radio programs. Here's a little question that listeners can ask. Why aren't you engaging more with the Australian Christian lobby? I'll just throw that out for listeners to be able to, make that contribution because, I think the ACL needs a bigger airing, deserves a bigger airing on mainstream media as, you get a great opportunity. I always love talking to you on Vision and on 2020, but there's not as big a call on the ACL's opinion. So there's something for listeners. You can contribute there. Why aren't you talking to the Australian Christian lobby about these things? Hey, I just note that...
Thanks, Neil. I would say, sorry, in Northern Territory on the euthanasia debate, our Northern Territory director there is often on the ABC, even though it's often in a, that they want the controversy, they want the negative sound bites. It's often what we get in left-wing media. But in some cases and in some states, we do have more access than others. But it is a good question for listeners to ask the media. We're involved in a lot of issues. We have a lot to say about the issues. We have experience and research, and we represent a broad section of the Christian community. So there definitely should be more openness. So thank you for bringing it up. But just to say, it's not for lack of trying. We try our best to engage with the media on a daily basis.
Well, talkback radio still is a powerful movement, no matter what station people might be listening to the talkback radio hosts. Hey, just noting that the New South Wales Premier Chris Minns says the government would love to offer a state funeral and calling John Laws an absolute legend. And just to top this off, Paul Keating, former Prime Minister, once said, forget the press gallery, educate John Laws and you educate Australia. And there's something significant in that because talk radio is not a spent force. Talk radio is very significant, especially when it comes to setting the agenda. Hey, there's lots of things on your agenda, Michelle. Let's start with some of these things, and we'll see if we can go through these fairly quickly. But there's so much here on the agenda that listeners need to listen in a little bit carefully, and where you can make some sort of impact, this is what you get from the Australian Christian lobby, opportunity to know what's going on and how you might respond. So let's talk, first of all, New South Wales sex-selective abortions bill. What's happening in New South Wales?
Yes, well, the Libertarian Party, John Ruddock, he's a member of the Legislative Council. He's introduced a bill to ban sex-selective abortions. Now, of course, we're against all abortions. I mean, that should go without saying, but I always have to clarify that life is sacred from conception. But there is rising cases all over Australia, but there's been research done to show that, particularly amongst immigrants, there is a higher male to female sex ratio at birth, meaning more males than females are being born. And this can't be described just by probability, but there is an actual reason why more males are being born than females. And this is to do with, strong cultural preferences for the birth of male children, meaning that female babies are being aborted. This is terrible. It should never happen. At the moment, it does happen in all over Australia. So this is a real stand that John Ruddock is making in New South Wales to say this has got to stop, to ban this. So anybody that goes to get an abortion that wants to abort their female baby because they prefer to have a male baby, that it would be illegal to do so, and it would be illegal also for the doctor to perform that abortion. We've got a letter writing campaign going on that, so I encourage people to write to their MP about this issue.
Yes, a letter writing campaign and the ACL website where you can find out some more about that. Stay with New South Wales for a moment here, Michelle. Something of a amendments missing idea, a New South Wales bill to restore the rights of institutions to refuse to participate in assisted suicide, or VAD. What's happening in New South Wales?
Yeah, and I'd like to note those two bills, the one about the sex-selective abortions and now this one about restricting the ability for faith-based institutions, giving them a right to not assisted suicide. So these are going to do something to wind back the damage that assisted suicide is. And at the moment, institutions being take in a really explicit legislation that they cannot force institutions.
Just noting here, Michelle, dropping out a little bit, and sometimes this happens. It usually corrects itself. But when we're talking about these bills, this one in New South Wales, rights of institutions to refuse to participate in assisted suicide, I mean, this is because government wanting to demand organisations actually participate here and think that they can bypass conscience to be able to do that. Some special honour here to Susan Carter in New South Wales. So she's played a role here? That's
right. She's a member of council lady in the New South Wales. We saw in Calvary and the ACT taken over by they weren't just services like abortion. It's really put them to say no, don't in New South Wales aged care and residential facilities on us. Just
going to take a little break here and a short song, but see if we can just fix this little breaking up issue. We'll come back. For listeners on those New South Wales bills, they'll be able to check out that detail on the ACL website. Let's turn some attention to the Australian Capital Territory, the ACT, where there's some new euthanasia laws that came into effect last week. What's the challenge here?
Yeah, from Susan bill to protect families. It's exactly the opposite of the conscientious objection. So hospices, Catholic, Christian, on to allow for suicide to their premises penalties. And so,
Michelle, this link is just not working for us. Let's just make sure that we can hear what you've got to add to all of this. Michelle, I've got you here, yep. Michelle.
Yep, I'm here.
All right, sorry. And I might just apologise to listeners. As you know, sometimes this happens. It is live radio, but we're talking ACT and new euthanasia laws that came into effect last week. Some conscientious protections here that you're aiming for?
Well, actually, we'd love to see them restored, but with the law coming into effect, conscientious rights have been refused. So we have faith-based hospitals, aged care facilities, hospices. They now have to have assisted suicide on their premises, or they face legal penalties. Our leading healthcare provider here, Calvary Hospitals, has confirmed that they will allow voluntary assisted dying practitioners to come on if their residents want to access euthanasia. So this is certainly an affront to their conscience, but they're forced to do it. Otherwise, they face penalties. So, this is a battle we've lost, one that will have to be wound back, and another reason why bills such as Susan Carter's in the New South Wales Parliament is necessary to protect conscientious objection.
Just to reflect on this for a moment, because there'll be a lot of listeners who can remember what happened with Calvary Hospital in Canberra, and just the fact that it's named Calvary Hospital gives you the hint that there's Christian roots to it, and there was always a refusal to participate in all of these pro-death positions that government in ACT was coming up with. And then, of course, there was a hostile takeover, and Calvary, with its Christian church roots, lost any control over the hospital. Is this something, is this like something that's likely to be a forerunner to what might be happening in other states and territories?
Yeah, and we've seen pushes. We've seen various bills, really by the Greens Party, trying to remove conscientious objection. So, for those who are proponents who really want to push and change culture on this, the Christian view is a real nuisance because we put a big question mark over it. We uphold the sanctity of life, and that's just not convenient for those who want to push death, push abortion and push euthanasia through all public hospitals and now even private and Christian-based hospitals in the nation. So we've got to really continue to stand for our right to object, to not even facilitate in referring somebody on for euthanasia. That, when people come to an aged care facility, if it's a Christian or Catholic facility, they should be told this is a hospice or an aged care facility that does not participate in this, and we need to retain that right to be able to object.
Let's stay on some life issues and change states now to South Australia. Late-term abortion, there's an impending vote there. What's happening there briefly?
Yeah, so another good proactive bill is to ban late-term abortion. So this is third trimester after 23 weeks. At the moment in South Australia, you can have an abortion for mental health reasons. There's other reasons as well. One of them is mental health. This could be a perfectly healthy baby, and there have been 79 abortions that have, late-term abortions in South Australia that have been recorded in recent years. And so it's just completely horrific, outrageous, unacceptable that healthy babies are being aborted. Of course, we don't support any abortion. Abortions of disabled babies should never happen. No baby should be aborted. But this is one we hope that members will be able to see the sense of, and that this would be the first step of winding back our terrible, horrific abortion laws that exist all around the nation.
There's a lot of issues that are going on, and for listeners, you might want to check the acl.org.au website to check what is happening there. Very quickly, on a national scale, the Federal Australian Law Reform Commission, commercial surrogacy, what's happening there?
Yeah, there's a real explicit push at the moment for commercial surrogacy to be legalised, but something has to happen at a federal level because at the moment it's considered as part of trafficking legislation, and that potential to exploit women. That doesn't go away with legalising and regulating it. It will make the problem worse if we do go down the route of allowing commercial surrogacy. So this is when you pay a woman to have a baby for you. And it's terrible. It exploits, it commodifies women's bodies. It incentivizes it for those that are poor, that need money. They'll say, oh, maybe I can have a baby for someone. But wombs should never be for hire. It is exploitation at one of the highest levels. It objectifies and commodifies the baby as well. So it makes the baby something that can be bought. It makes having a baby a contractual arrangement. And we've heard of many cases where things have simply gone wrong. There was a baby born to a Thai surrogate for a couple in Australia who had Down syndrome, and then the commissioning parents didn't want the baby, so this baby was in limbo. And there's another case where a same-sex couple had a baby through surrogacy and sexually abused the child. So this is not in the best interest of children. It's also not in the best interest of the women that are having their babies. There is a maternal instinct that kicks in when you have a baby. Your breast milk kicks in. So there's a psychological impact as well. So there is a push around the nation to continue to liberalise surrogacy laws. And again, this is one where Christians need to stand for the sanctity of life, for the preciousness of human life. That making it easier for people to have babies in this way isn't a positive way forward or an ethical way forward to address the problem of infertility.
There's so many dimensions, and there's more we could talk about, but we've run out of time. I'm going to point listeners to the ACL website, connect with the Australian Christian Lobby, and be prepared to rise to the occasion when they've got a petition or they've got some letter writing campaign or they've got some way that you can be in contact with your local MPs. acl.org.au. Michelle Pearse is CEO of the Australian Christian Lobby. Michelle, thanks so much for that update today on 2020.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.